Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today. And though you've come through many obstacles.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to Fire Force Episode 3. So, I got some dislikes, it seemed, on the Episode 2 video, possibly because I was hating on Arthur, I think his name is, the blonde guy, new member of the Fire Force. And I wanted to take some time to more explain my thoughts again here before we get into this next episode. So it's just, I don't absolutely hate his character because we haven't had enough to really get that kind of feeling towards him yet. It's just I don't like what he kind of represents and what he kind of, or seems to at least, seems to represent, and the kind of character, excuse me, that he seems to be. See, so many anime, a lot of times shonen, but various other types of anime too, have the entire rival thing going on. It's a very old trope, and honestly, it's very tired. It's been done to death, and in my opinion, it's rarely done really well. Most of the time, it's either just meh, or sometimes it's even bad. And it's so cliche and boring to just make a rival character like this, who's just the antithesis to the main character. And there are exceptions. There are exceptions. There are rival characters who are really good. And hell, for all I know, Arthur could end up being that way. But as of episode 2, as of what it showed in that episode, he seems just like a generic rival character. Even with him at the end, realizing more about why they hide their weapons and stuff and everything, even with that, it still doesn't take him away pretty much at all from that kind of archetype. And as I mentioned last time as well, I didn't like him that much because of what he did to Shinra as a character. Not like what Arthur did in series, but how, in order to accommodate for this rivalry, they had to basically change a lot of Shinra's personality. Shinra in episode 2 did not feel like the same character as in episode 1. If I'm being completely honest. And you could possibly chalk that up to the fact that he's starting to feel more comfortable around the Fire Force, around his team. And so he's opening up a little more. And you could say in episode 1 he was a little more stiff and proper because of that. But there was really no, yeah, it was clear that he was nervous in episode 1. I mean, that's a very big part of his character. But there's no real evidence that it goes anywhere really far beyond that. And that he would, there's also no evidence that it's been even that long since he started in the Fire Force by the time episode 2 happens. In fact, it's almost it almost kind of feels like it might have been a couple days at best. There's no real reason to believe it's been any longer. And so it feels off that he would change that notably. I mean, it's not like this massive, drastic change that absolutely turns his character on its head. No, but it's notable, and he feels like a different character. He doesn't feel like the same character exactly, at least not to the level that he should. If you want to expand upon a character and build upon him, that's fine. Um, but that's pretty much it. They took it a little too far in my eyes. And as I said last time as well, he kind of became what I didn't want him to be and what I praised episode 1 for not having him be. I like that they went against your expectations. Seeing his design, whether it's right or wrong or whatever you think about judging someone based on their design, we as people do that. And with episode 1, they fully went against that. They went against his entire design and made him completely different than what you would expect him to act like. He was nice, he was kind, he was proper, and he was a good person who had this really tragic backstory that made you root for him. He had good goals that were completely wholesome and really like strongly moral, I guess you could say. Like there was no like negative aspect to any of that. And then episode 2, suddenly he's there. Suddenly he's getting rude at points. He gets aggressive. He gets really. He just feels so different. All these different character traits that would just don't make sense for what we saw in episode 1. Like the thing he said to Maki, for example. From what we saw in episode 1, Shinra would never say that to Maki. Calling her an ogre or whatever exactly he said. And the aggressive fighting and arguing with Arthur just feels so forced because it's like, oh, let's have a rival character because all these anime, all these shonen have rival characters. And it's just, it feels forced. Because because it has to change the character that we met in episode 1 to accommodate for that. And on top of it, Arthur isn't even that interesting. He's a self-centered, conceited idiot. Whoop-de-doo. We've seen characters like that before. And I've been told in the comments of the last video that he does grow and he does become better as a character. And maybe he does. And I hope he does. But he's such bland, uninteresting, generic rival character that I just feel doesn't add anything to the show so far. And does more to hurt the series than actually impact it positively. Again, this is just based off of episode 2. So keep in mind, like I said, it could change, and I hope it does. I want to make that clear. I'm not like hating on the entire series because of this. And I hope he does change, and I hope they just don't continue with this dumb rivalry aspect too long. Because it really drags things down. And again, I don't like how it affected Shinra either. I really don't like how it affected his character. I'm just hoping that it gets better in that regard. Pretty much the rest of the stuff I like about this. The rest of the stuff with episode 2, I really did enjoy. I enjoyed the stuff with Maki, even with the ridiculous fact that her one ability is named Bobo 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 Bo. Um, I liked the part with the father who turned into an infernal but wasn't aggressive. I thought that was exceptionally interesting. I liked the building we got with Obi, just building his character up and showing the different sides to his personality and the emotions he goes through doing this kind of work and whatnot. It's like this is the kind of stuff I like to see. But the rivalry thing is the only real negative aspect I've had with this series so far at all. But it is a negative for me. I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to hold that back. If you want to dislike my videos, go ahead. I mean, you have that right. I'm not going to stop you. I'm not going to tell you not to. But I just want you to understand why I said what I said with episode 2 and why I have that dislike for his character so far. He's just not helping with this series for me. He's not helping me. You know what I mean. I've already explained it. Hopefully that'll change. Hopefully I'll end up liking him more. Hopefully he'll evolve more. And this rivalry aspect won't last long because it's just we need to move past the entire aggressive rivalry thing in anime and in pretty much all media, really. The entire thing about having like aggressively competitive or even antagonistic rivals thing is just stupid. It's a stupid archetype, it's a stupid trope, and very rarely does it really work out. And the best examples of rival characters in anime are when they stop being like actual rival characters and just become blatant friends, like with Kuwabara and Yu Yu Hakusho. It's like he stops actually being a rival and just becomes a friend to Yusuke, and it's like even you could even say the same about Hiei if you consider him a rival character too. It's like those are usually the best examples. And then you have the stuff like with Naruto where Sasuke just the rivalry with Naruto and Sasuke and just drags the entire thing down. And then for some reason tries to make you believe that they're best friends, even though there's absolutely zero evidence for that in the series. There's almost no evidence they even like each other. And it just tries to force that idea onto you. And it's just like, ugh. I'm glad One Piece doesn't do that with its main character with Luffy. Luffy doesn't really have a rival in that way. The only kind of rivalry with the main crew is between Zoro and Sanji. Um, that's pretty much it. So at least it's not with the main character, but even that gets old, and I'm a huge One Piece fan, so. And Hunter x Hunter just doesn't really do that at all. So I gotta give praise to Hunter x Hunter for that. And hell, I don't even like it in My Hero Academia with Deku and Bakugo that much. The only reason I tolerate it is because of how Bakugo's development goes. If it wasn't for having that amazing character development throughout the series, I would probably not put up with it at all. But yeah, it's just I'm not a fan of that kind of thing. I'm not a fan of the entire aggro uh rival kind of archetype and trope in anime and anything. But again, if it ends up being done well, if things evolve and Arthur ends up becoming a much more likable, interesting, and three-dimensional character, cool. But I really hope that Shinra goes back to how he was as a character. I really don't want him to be super aggressive and rude and just all of that stuff, especially towards other characters who have nothing to do with the rivalry, like Maki. And it's not even just because I like Maki, although I do. It just feels so out of character for him, especially since Maki has nothing to do with their rivalry. So it just seems really out of character for him to be so rude to her in episode 2, even though he was not like that at all in episode 1. Sorry, I've been talking way too long about this. I just had to go on that little ramble because I wanted to explain things. I wanted to make sure you guys understood exactly where my stance is on this. I don't absolutely hate the character. He's not a Sasuke yet. And I'm hoping he becomes better, and I'm hoping things get better with his character and with the development and all of that. And I'm hoping they leave behind the stupid rivalry bit. But right now, it is my one issue with this series. Everything else is great. So keep in mind, I am still enjoying Fire Force. But yeah, I kind of already discussed what happened last episode, so I don't know what's going to continue. I know there's still more characters we haven't met. So we'll just have to see where episode 3 goes. Oh, and one thing I almost forgot to mention. I also don't like how Arthur kind of just came in really suddenly and also still really soon after Shinra came into the Fire Force, to the squad. It's like, why didn't he just start at the same time as Shinra? It makes absolutely no sense, and it hurts the immersion for me a little bit. Because again, there's no evidence that it's been any notable length of time. It feels like it's been like maybe a couple days at best, so why didn't he just start at the same time? It makes no sense to me. And in most official capacities like this, I would think they would start at the same time. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But that's one of the more minor aspects of my issue with this. That's not even a big deal. But anyways, we're just going to get on with episode 3, see what this episode has in store, and hopefully it's more enjoyable for me than episode 2 was. Because so far, episode 1 is still the best of the 2 we've seen for me. If you see things differently, by the way, if you have different opinions on all of this, that is perfectly fine and valid. I'm not trying to tell you that I'm right and you're wrong. No. Everyone's opinions and views on this all are valid. It's all subjective. It's all opinion. Just because I don't like something doesn't mean you don't like it. You can like whatever you want. Whatever you like. Don't let me influence your enjoyment of the series. I'm just simply sharing mine. That's all. Either way, let's get this going. So when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So, I had completely forgotten about the rookie games and everything. I had forgot to mention it in the opening because of that, because I it just kind of skipped my mind with everything else. Like everything else was kind of more of the big focus for me within the last episode. That was kind of just like thrown in there. Um, but remembering it, this had the potential to be easily the worst episode so far because this entire rookie games thing is stupid. It's a stupid concept, and it just feels honestly wrong. Considering how important the Fire Force is, considering that they're this big company, well, group of companies, um, organized in order to basically save humanity from this infernal issue. The idea of having a set of games for these rookies to compete against each other and just seemed really wrong to me. Seemed like morally wrong. It'd be like the equivalent of the police having games to see who could use their firearms more or something. I don't know. Like imagine that scene in Men in Black where Agent J has to train by shooting those cardboard cutouts and everything of the aliens, and he shoots the little girl with the quantum physics book. Great scene in the movie, but it definitely makes me think of that in a way. But the point is, this had the potential to just be this stupid, immoral, dumb thing. But seeing this episode and learning the revelations we have in it, I think that's the point. I think it's intentional that these rookie games are supposed to come across as really immoral and unethical and just not really okay. Because it's made clear in this episode that the Fire Force as a whole is not one big knit group, but rather because of it having all these different companies, they all kind of run on their own, and they all kind of act as rivals to each other in a way, where they don't share information with each other, they don't help each other, and it seems like the Fire Force as a whole is not that well constructed. And because of that, the idea of them hosting something as unethical as this kind of actually makes sense to me. Um, it just fits as this idea of a lot of it's probably corrupt. And because of that, we're kind of like peeling back the fact that Company 8 might be the only company that's truly, like, really ethically good here. Um, we'll just have to see as we get more information on that. So we were introduced to another new character, a member of Company 1, it seems, Tamaki, I believe her name is. And Tamaki is very fan service heavy. And again, I had heard prior to watching this that this series had a lot of fan service in it. And it seems like this is at least part of the explanation for that. Tamaki is this young rookie in Company 1 who uses her flames, her pyrokinetic flames, to kind of give her this like cat form, it seems. Don't know the full extent of what she can do with that yet, though, because we only got glimpses at it in this episode. But that's interesting. But a lot of the focus on her in this episode involved the entire trope of accidental groping and whatnot, and accidental sexual situations. This is a very, very notable trope in anime. it's been done to death in so many shows, and rarely am I ever okay with it. Because honestly, it's basically, in my eyes, and if you see it differently, that's fine, but in my eyes, it's almost kind of making light of sexual assault. Because the entire idea of like accidentally groping someone like that, like, it kind of reads that way to me. Even if it is accidental, and even if it's like you're not, the person's not intending to touch them or anything, it's just, it kind of can come across that way. That's all I'm saying, and it's a little uncomfortable. The only kind of situations I'm okay with it in is in situations where it's clearly trying to parody that kind of thing, like in Uzaki-chan Wants to Hang Out, in which it parodies a lot of those common tropes, but multiple times within the series, at least season one, because season two is not out yet. It parodies the entire accidental groping trope. There's a couple of different times it happens. Um, and the thing is, it's very clearly making fun of that. The series makes fun of a lot of different tropes in these kind of shows. So I'm more okay with it there, but even then, it's still the weakest parts of Uzaki-chan. Um, even with that aspect of it, and here, the series is not a parody, and it's clearly not meant to be seen as such in here. It's just, it's using the trope just in a serious way, you could say. And I'm not a big fan of it here, and I really think that it's kind of like this entire thing with a lot of anime that does this kind of thing. Like, it sells to some people for some reason. Some people really just like get a kick out of it, I guess. Maybe it's a bigger thing in Japan, I don't know. But it just feels really off to me. But it does make me think, between Maki and Tamaki now, we get to see two different kinds of fan service. Maki's fan service seems to be more natural fan service, where it's not like thrust in our faces, where it's not like super um, upfront about it. It tries to hold it back. It doesn't even do it too often. Like, we see cleavage on her, sure, but like the only time we saw real fan service with her was in episode one so far. It's much more reserved, much more natural, I feel, in its execution, and I can respect that a little more. Tamaki has more of the like exaggerated fan service, where it's really heavy, really upfront and in your face, and it's not that great. I don't know if the creator of this intended to have them kind of seemingly represent two different kinds of fan service. Um, but that seems to be kind of what it looks like it's going for. And I guess you could throw in the nun girl, I can't remember her name, into the same vein as Maki, as well, if you want to include her. She doesn't seem, at least so far, as notable of a character, though. Tamaki clearly is going to appear again, especially since I've seen her character design before. She's clearly going to appear again, and Maki's kind of a main character. So, yeah. Um, Another thing to note about this episode is that they held back on the rivalry aspect. It was still there, and it was still annoying, but it was almost more one sided this time. It was more of Arthur just being a twat the entire time. Shinra really kind of went back to more of episode 1 Shinra, though he had a little hint of episode 2 Shinra in him too. Um, but he was much better in this episode. Much better. Um, I'm not a huge fan of the entire thing about him staring at Tamaki's chest. Briefly, but honestly, whatever. It's clear that I'm not going to be a fan of everything this series does. That's very clear. So as long as I like most of it, and as long as it keeps my attention and interest enough to continue, hopefully I'll just be able to put up with the negative aspects. Um, and now we get to the parts of this episode that really shine. The heavy reveals and information dumps. We get a lot of big information in the opening, in the cold open, but more than that, during the games, they're interrupted, and we don't really even get to see anything of the games, which I'm so happy for, because again, that it is so it's such an unethical idea that I was just really annoyed by it. So I'm glad that we just kind of skipped that altogether. Instead, though, Shinra comes across uh, the Joker. Again, I'm calling him that for now until we know any other kind of name for him. So the Joker is this guy who, in the last episode, interfered at the site of the fire, causing an explosion with his ash. We also saw in the cold open the guy who created the ash, I guess. This kind of like mad scientist looking dude. But the Joker here, it almost seems to me like it's trying to make him out to be kind of this violent revolutionary kind of character. It very much seems by the information we're given and stuff that he's against the Fire Force, and that's why he's specifically going after them, and now specifically going after Shinra. It seems like he really does not like them, and he's not afraid to be violent and even murderous. But we see he also knows a lot. One, we find out that Shinra's younger brother is alive, that he actually survived the fire from 12 years ago. But Shinra realizes that something's wrong because he was told that his brother was burnt up, bones and all, which means he was lied to, presumably by the captain of Company 1, who we did see was very clearly hiding something. One, it's very clear he knew who Shinra was, and two, he was kind of avoiding talking to Shinra. So I'm thinking he's definitely one of the corrupt ones. I'm wondering why he hid the survival of Shinra's brother, though. And the only thing I can think of is that either Company 1 specifically or whoever they're working for, I forgot who it mentioned they were specifically reporting to, or someone else that they're working with is manipulating or experimenting on or something like that with Shinra's younger brother. Something in that regard where he's probably going to end up being a bad guy at some point. It's either that or he's going to be like a victim. He's going to be held captive, and Shinra and probably the rest of Company 8 are probably going to have to go save him at some point, some big rescue mission. Something like that. Probably one of those two things. Either he's going to end up becoming a bad guy at some point because he's being manipulated by Company 1 or whoever it is, or he's going to end up just being a victim and has to be rescued. One of the two. It's pretty clear it's going in one of those directions, though. Um, and we're also given a lot of doubt about the Fire Force through the Joker's discussions with Shinra and all as well. And he even offers to have Shinra join him, which is interesting. But Shinra refuses because he wants to be a hero and he believes in the Fire Force still. However, after the events, he does ask Obi to tell him the truth about like what's really going on and can the Fire Force be trusted. So it's clear that he did have some doubt placed in his mind, and I like that. I really like that, and I really like that he asked Obi. It's clear that he trusts Obi, and it's clear that Obi can be trusted. So he feels like Obi is the right person to go to about that. And through this, we find out that Company 8 was specifically built around Obi, which we learned earlier in the episode and all, because of his upstanding moral fiber and code of ethics and all. He's just a genuinely really good person, and so Company 8 was built around him. And we find out now that it has the purpose, the secret purpose of researching and just kind of like looking into all of the other companies, 1 through 7, that their entire goal is to find out what's happening with these other companies, what they know, what they're hiding, all of that kind of stuff. And it's like, that's really interesting. So I hope that's going to be an ongoing part of the narrative. The action in this episode was good, all of that jazz, yada yada, same as ever. um, it sucks that Maki was sidelined so much for this episode. She had like 1 or 2 good moments, but that's about it. There's a couple characters we didn't even see in this episode. And I just feel like this episode was made for 2 reasons. One, to kind of bring in all of this information and doubt about the Fire Force, to expand upon all of that, to give, you know, the reveals and the information about Company 8's true mission, all of that stuff. And also to introduce the Company 1 characters specifically, the Captain and Tamaki. Both of them are very likely to become extremely important. The Captain, because of what he's hiding, the fact that he was the Fire Force captain at that event 12 years ago when Shinra's mother died. The fact that he clearly knows Shinra and is hiding shit. And Tamaki, because again, I've seen art and screenshots of her before, kind of in the same amount as Maki, pretty much. Not as much, but very close. So it seems like she's a really notable character. From what I can tell, either that or she's just really popular. Either that or she's just a minor character who's just really popular, which is possible. That's very possible. A lot of shows have that. But yeah, this episode had a lot of good in it. And it cut back on the rivalry aspect, which I really appreciate because that was so fucking annoying last episode. Arthur isn't any better in this episode, though, if I'm honest. In fact, he was just kind of a twat this episode. Just kind of an annoying twat. Like, the dude was like, there would be no reason for Shinra to lie to him about that. Shinra's not even the kind of person who would do that. And he basically is putting people in danger with just his continued forcing of this rivalry idea. And then on top of that, he's just kind of a dick. And super fucking conceited. So this episode didn't do anything to make me like him more. I'm just glad that it also didn't focus on the rivalry much of anymore, and that Shinra kind of reverted back to how he was more in episode 1. So at least there's that in that regard. But yeah, that Arthur and then the stuff with Tamaki were my negatives for this episode for sure. Um, and with the Tamaki stuff, I just want to make it clear, I'm not hating on it just because it's fan service, because there's plenty of fan service that I like. I have no issue with fan service as a whole. It just depends on how it's handled. The entire accidental groping thing is just, I'm not a fan of it. Maybe because of having a history with sexual assault and really strong feelings on that. But it again, I know it's accidental. I know it's technically not sexual assault and everything because of that, but or at least it's not as bad as if it were intentional. But at the same time, it's still not really okay. The only time that kind of stuff is okay is in the case of purposeful parody. Honestly, that's the only reason why there's a lot of stuff in Dragon Maid that honestly in a serious situation would piss me the fuck off. But because it's legitimately trying to parody all of that stuff in other shows and manga, that's the only reason I'm okay with it in Dragon Maid. Otherwise, it's like in other kind of context, that kind of stuff would just piss me off. And again, this is one of those points where it's trying to take itself seriously and just having the fan service for the sake of having the fan service rather than actually trying to say something about it. But yeah, even with those negatives, I did still enjoy this episode, not as much as episode 1. Episode 1 for me is still the pinnacle of this series. It's still the best of what this series can be. But this one was definitely better than episode 2 for me. So tell me your thoughts down in the comments below. And for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.